The bypass ring is a classic design that you can use with pretty much any bead. And so today I'm going to show you to make it. This is one of my favorite designs to make. I love using wire to make a coil and wrap it around into a really cool ring with a beautiful bead in the front. You only need a few materials, and let's go over those now. You're gonna need a ring mandrel, a steel bench block and chasing hammer. A nylon jaw plier is always good to have when you're working with wire, 16 gauge wire and 24 gauge wire, and a little bead, a chain nose plier, flat nose plier, and a flush cutter. Now let's get started. Grab your 16 gauge wire and cut about 1.5 feet. Now we're going to make a coil on our ring mandrel, and I always like to work about 2 sizes up from what I want my ring to be at the end. So I want my ring to be a 9 when I'm finished, so I'm going to work on the 10.5 mark. I'm going to keep my ring centered over that mark, and then wrap it around your ring mandrel 5 times. I'm pulling it to make sure I get a really nice coil. Okay. And now I'm going to take it off my mandrel. And I want to say that this is a really amazing design that's been around the industry for a long time, and this is just my take on it. So just remember that you can always see and be inspired by design and make it your own. All right, so now that we have our little coil, we're going to make the 2 wings, we're gonna make them into paddles. So kind of pull them out to either side where you think the center of your ring will be, where your bead will be, and where you will fold those up or down. So pull those to either side. And then I'm gonna go ahead and trim this one up a little bit here. You're going to grab your bench block and your chasing hammer and set your piece here, the tail out, and just start hammering. I'm gonna work from the inside out. If you need to, you can pull the top part of the coil up to get into it to hammer that portion if you want to do that. I'm going to pull that back down. And the same with the other side. All right, now just pull everything back together so it looks a little bit more like your spiral. And if you need to, put it back here on the mandrel. If you need to reshape your coil, maybe you think that it got a little bit too big in that whole process, you can always reshape it here. You can even, if there's a kink in it, you can hammer on your steel mandrel. So it's just kind of a reshaping moment. So the next portion of this ring, if you feel like you've got everything where you want it, is going to be folding these tails up or down and wrapping them around themselves. I just want to do a quick hammer right here because I think it needs a little bit more flattening. Okay. Now I'm going to come back up here, bring that tail back up. This is all up to you. You can hammer as much, you can hammer a lot or a little, up to you. So now I'm going to grab my flat nose plier and bend one of the tails up. I'm going to grab it here. I'm going to bend this one first towards the other one. To make it go across all the bands. And I can feel that that pulled on that wire a little bit, so I'm just gonna put it here on my mandrel for a second. This is the biggest tip of this ring, is you kind of just have to keep looking at the size, looking at the shape as you go. Because since you're pulling on this spiral, it can change the size just in a flash, so. All right, so you want to make sure everything looks good. And if you want, you can even pop that out a little bit. Okay, so I bent the first one. Probably bend it a little bit more. And now I'm going to do the second one here. And make sure that when you are folding them, you want them to hold each other at the top of the rung. So when you fold this bottom one up, make sure that your second tail is on the inside of it, if that makes sense. Okay, so once again with your flat nose, you're going to grab this tail and bend it up towards the other. So they just bypass each other. Just gonna do a little bit of reshaping. All right. So now we are going to cut these tails and wrap them around the rungs. So I'll start with this one here. Kind of hold everything in place where you want it to be. So once you cut it, you can add it back. So make sure you have plenty. We're going to be using a chain nose plier to wrap that around. And honestly, I'm just gonna cut it to here first and then bend it and then cut a little bit more. I do not want to run out of wire. Just gonna do that. And it's going to capture that wire. And I'll go back and cut that little piece off in a moment. So then let's do the same thing on the other tail. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut those ends off. And I'm going, once again, to do a little bit more reshaping on this. And now I'm going to pull these bends out a little bit more. Now spread out your coils if you want to. Another thing I love about this ring is every one turns out a little bit different. I mean, I've done this ring probably 30 times and I never get the same exact result, which is, I think it's one of the cool things about it because every ring is different. So if you want, you can really pinch those little tails into themselves right here with your chain nose so your wires won't slide out. And whenever you're happy with it, you can go ahead and start wrapping your bead. So there's just another example. These are some of the first ones I did, and every one is going to be a little different. So I'm going to grab my 24 gauge wire here. Just wrap a little Amazonite bead on there. So with just a little bit of 24 gauge wire, I'm going to wrap my bead. I'm just going to wrap it from here to here, wherever it fits visually. And give yourself a tail. I'm going to start with my short side over here. And you can wrap to the front of the ring, or you can wrap to the rungs on the inside of the ring if you like. Trim that off, and then with your chain nose, just make sure it's not sticking out. Actually, now I'm going to go down across diagonally. And just wrap a few times here at the bottom. All right, and now you know how to make a coil bypass ring. Let's go over the tools and supplies I used for this project one more time. I used my ring mandrel, my bench block and chasing hammer, 16 gauge wire and 24 gauge wire, and a small nugget bead, a nylon draw plier, a chain nose plier, a flat nose plier, and a flush cutter. And don't forget that a ring vise can be helpful in holding your ring mandrel. If you'd like to pick up any of the tools or supplies we used today, check out the links below. What kind of designer jewelry would you like to see us make? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And now that you know how to make a coil bypass ring, you can say, I made this.